But let's just turn our attention, should we, to the United States. Public anger reaching boiling point in the States because of that deadlock on Capitol Hill continuing. And, of course, the shutdown all going to happen on October the 17th if no agreement is met. Let's talk to former Republican Press Secretary Idle Oman, who was in Washington for the last shutdown, and Professor of International Political Studies at Richmond University, Dr. James Boyce. Good to see you both. Thanks for being here. Look, Idle, can we start off just by trying to clarify who is to blame, or at least what is to blame here?
Sure. I mean, what you're seeing right now is really dramatic political theater. It's a standoff between the Democrats and the Republicans. I think at the end of the day, we don't know where the blame really fits, but I would argue that the Republicans are actually exercising their constitutional authority to force a conversation about spending priorities of the country. They have made some concessions. Right now, the Democrats have made no concessions. They're not negotiating. And I think what you're seeing is a failure in presidential leadership, actually.
But aren't you seeing the Republicans just trying to play politics with an issue that is too big, saying that we'll move on this if you look again at healthcare?
No, I mean, that is what happens in spending conversations in Congress. I mean, that is the debate that you have to have. And unfortunately, there has not been a proper budget passed in however many years. The continuing resolution is how the country has been funded for the last several Congresses. And I think, you know, what you're seeing now is a president who is digging his heels in and not taking responsibility for this shutdown.
But Idil, it's fair to say that you fly the Republican flag.
Yes, but I think it is incumbent upon both parties and both sides to actually come to the table and talk. Right now, the Republicans have put forward 11 pieces of legislation actually to fund things, and they have rolled back from their original position of demanding full defunding of Obamacare. Now they're talking about a one-year delay in one provision. And, you know, the president himself has already passed 5 delays through executive order. And so this is a legislative process trying to do a legislative change. And I think, you know, so far, the Democrats aren't negotiating.
Look, this is a big domestic issue, James, no doubt about it. There's got to be a wider concern, though, with all of this, because with the shutdown, if this does actually happen, fully happen come the 17th, this is going to have a global impact, isn't it?
We have to be a bit careful, Stephen, because I think you're perhaps falling into the trap that the Obama White House is trying to lay for everybody, which is actually to conflate several issues here. As we were talking about, there is the issue to do with the healthcare issue, with the continuing resolution, but this idea of the global meltdown is actually related to the debt ceiling crisis. You might remember we were talking at the beginning of the year about the fiscal cliff, and we had all the issues from The Simpsons on, for example. They are two different issues. We do need to keep them slightly separate because they are being conflated by the White House. But there's no doubt this is having a knock-on effect. The president was meant to be out in Asia this week, for example. That's been cancelled. So there's going to be a whole series of issues here about appearance and reality which are going to negatively impact the United States.
Yeah, but these two are, in essence, linked. They're happening at the same time, aren't they?
Well, they are leading into one another and they could have a knock-on effect, but it's in the president's political interest to try and conflate these issues by continuing this narrative of good Democrat, evil Republican. And of course, it's simply not true. And the way that the Congress is acting at the moment is within its constitutional mandate to do so, whether one approves of it or not.
Is it going to be a last-minute deal on this, Idle, do we think?
I think so, absolutely. And what you're going to see is actually there is a conflation, a natural conflation of the two issues, which I think makes sense, though. And so you're talking about the debt ceiling is right. They will have to reach an agreement on the debt ceiling. The Republicans will have to agree to raise it. For that, the price will be some concessions on the Democratic side, and that's what we haven't seen yet, but I'm sure that we will in the coming days. There will be talks and they will come to some kind of agreement.
Because the reality of the situation is, for the states at the moment, and for the people we've been talking to here on Sunrise this morning, is you've got an awful lot of people who are really suffering, particularly veterans, war veterans, recent war veterans, who are finding themselves in a absolutely dreadful situation, not knowing where they're going to get the next dollar from.
I think what you're seeing is a really unfortunate playing out of politics. Republicans have actually introduced legislation to fund veterans and 10 other various agencies to kind of demonstrate that they're willing to get things going again. And it's the Senate Democratic leadership has said, we refuse to consider any of this. We want a clean resolution or nothing. And so the people are caught in the middle, but this is unfortunately something that happens when the Congress and the American public is deeply divided.
Just very briefly, James, what difference does this make that we're in Obama's second term here? Does that take some of the pressure off? Can he afford to be more bullish as a president as a result of that?
It's possible. If you go back to the classic last example when Bill Clinton was in this situation, it was in the lead-up to the re-election campaign, and it was considered that whoever won that showdown between Clinton and Gingrich would go on to win in '96. Gingrich was seen to blink. It led to Clinton's re-election. Now Obama... You can make an argument that both sides really have very little to gain by capitulating at this point. Obama won't run for re-election, and those members of the House, for example, who are putting the position in this situation, really are so far ahead of Obama in their districts that they don't need to really capitulate for political reasons.
Oh, it's fascinating stuff. Good to see you both this morning. Thank you.